Thank you very much, Jenny. I'm very happy to be here with you all, and thank you all for coming. And I also thank all the participants who are going to listen to this online. Jenny has been asking me for many years to speak in this seminar, but I never had anything to do with religion until I started publishing this statue that turned out to be a cult statue. And therefore, it has some religious connotations, and I'm very happy that at last I can participate in this religious seminar in the Swedish Institute. Now, the cult of Dionysus in Piraeus was a grand affair. In the month Poseidon, which fell between November and December, the Deme of Piraeus celebrated the Dionysia festival, which lasted for 4 days. The festival began with a procession through the streets of Piraeus, culminating in a bull sacrifice at the sanctuary of Dionysus. It also comprised dramatic performances in the large theater on Munichia Hill, today known as Castella. Both tragedies and comedies were staged in this theater, and at least one drama by Euripides, attended by Socrates, is supposed to have been performed in Piraeus, according to the testimony of Aelian. And according to the testimony of Plato, Socrates went also to Piraeus to attend the inaugural festival of the cult of Bendis. And it's very likely that the two events coincided. He went for Bendis and he stayed on for a performance. The dramatic performances of Piraeus are further documented by a votive relief dedicated to Dionysus in the late 5th century BC, representing a youthful Dionysus reclining on a couch, accompanied by a Maenad and attended by 3 actors carrying masks and tambourines. This relief is now in the Athens National Museum. And the Maenad has an inscription. She's called Pedia or Pedia, and it's not quite clear if this means education or fun. I keep reproducing this map from the book of Robert Garland because it shows the Munichia Hill. I don't know if you can see it. Yep. It's down on the right. We do not know the exact date of the theater. It was partially excavated in the year 1888, and it is now built over, so it is no longer visible. In any case, we are sure that it functioned in the second half of the 5th century. And we assume that the Temple of Dionysus, mentioned in a Phoebic decrease of the 4th century BC, must have been nearby, because usually the theater of Dionysus is accompanied by a temple, like in Athens, the theater of Dionysus, and also in Thorikos, we have the same situation. But Piraeus was blessed with 2 theaters. A second, smaller theater of Dionysus was built in the 2nd century and has come to light near the Zea harbor. It can still be visible in the courtyard of the Piraeus Museum, and it's partly rock cut. I will anticipate some of what I'm going to say later, but the 2nd century, it was built in the 2nd century, because in the earlier periods, the cult of Dionysus was interrupted by the occupation of the Macedonians of Munichia Hill. So I think the reason they built a 2nd theater is because they couldn't use the big theater for at least 100 years. The cult of Dionysus in Piraeus is reasonably well documented in epigraphical and literary evidence in the 4th century, but the sources are silent after the Macedonian occupation of Munikia Hill in 322. The Macedonian garrison must have disrupted Dionysiac worship in the area. And I think that's why another theater was built down there. The gap seems to have been filled, however, by the establishment of a private cult of Dionysus, not far from the main Piraeus harbor, which was established sometime after the liberation of Piraeus in 229. This private cult of Dionysus was revealed thanks to a rescue excavation that was carried out during the construction of the Municipal Theatre of Piraeus in 1884. And here you see a photo of the theatre, really a very beautiful theatre and warmly recommended. I go there at least once a year for performances. By a strange coincidence, the foundations of the modern theatre rest on an ancient sanctuary of Dionysus, god of the theatre. And there is nothing in between, because Piraeus was destroyed and nothing was built between the ancient times and this new theatre. It is as if the god himself has stamped his presence on this site, marking it as serving his cult in perpetuity. Modern theatre goers attending performances in the Municipal Theatre of Piraeus are still paying homage to Dionysus, patron god of the theatre. And unfortunately, there is no inscription in the theatre telling us about this wonderful coincidence. The main object of this paper, however, is the marble statue of Dionysus, which was recovered from the site, having been used as building material. I will try to demonstrate, among other things, that it is a cult statue, but I want to begin with an introduction to the site of the cult. The rescue excavation uncovered parts of a large private house, which consisted of colonnaded courts surrounded by large rooms. The monumental entrance to this complex was decorated with 2 columns in antis. The house was built on 2 levels. The lower level, at the top of the screen, comprising a very large colonnaded court, which was never fully excavated because it extended beyond the boundaries of the theatre. The house was centrally located then, as well as now, near the main Piraeus harbor. The excavation was carried out by Iakovos Dragatsis, and the remains were published by the German archaeologist Wilhelm Döpfeld in Athenische Mitteilungen of 1884, and these drawings come from Döpfeld's publication. The association of this house with the private cult of Dionysus is documented by 2 inscribed stelae, which were recovered at the bottom of the staircase leading from the upper level to the house to the lower level, and also an epigram, IG222948, which was found embedded in a wall of the house. So it was found in situ, this epigram. All 3 inscriptions are now in the Piraeus Museum. They are focused on a man called Dionysios, son of Agathocles of the deme of Marathon, who served as priest of Dionysus and became the chief benefactor of this private cult. The inscriptions provide essential information on the financing and running of the private cult of Dionysus in Piraeus in the first quarter of the 2nd century BC. The epigram, I do not have a photograph here, this is another inscription. The epigram is addressed by Dionysius to the god, stating that he dedicated the temple, sanctuary, and statues of the god in the hope of achieving Dionysus' goodwill towards himself, his family, and the members of the private theisos. And I will give you here a translation of the epigram. Quote, "O Lord, Dionysius dedicated this temple to you and the fragrant sanctuary and statues in your likeness and everything else. He did not try, or Bacchus, to increase the wealth of silver in his house, but the vessels for your cult practices. In return, Dionysus, please be merciful and preserve his house, his family, and your whole theisos." End of quotation. The earlier of the two stelae, the one on the screen, is dated to 185/4 and is made of Himetian marble. It is now on display in the courtyard of the Piraeus Museum. And what you see here is an honorary decree. The 15 members of the private cult named here and named as Orgeones and Dionysiastai honor Dionysius of Marathon for his services to the cult, offering him an ivy crown. It is interesting that all members are Athenian citizens, but none is from the deme of Piraeus. Several are prominent citizens known from elsewhere. We know them from other inscriptions. Dionysius himself belongs to the deme of Marathon, but obviously he was resident in Piraeus because his house sheltered the shrine of Dionysus, as stated in his epigram. And I suspect the other members of this theisos also lived in Piraeus, because the fact that you're a member of the deme does not necessarily mean you live in your deme. You can live anywhere else. And I suspect they were all living in Piraeus at the time. The point made in the epigram that I read to you, that the silver holdings purchased by Dionysius were not meant to increase the wealth of his house, but were intended for the shrine, is very good evidence that the sanctuary was inside Dionysius' private house. The later stele, IG 22-1326, which I do not show here, is made of Pentelic marble and is dated to 176/5 after the death of Dionysius. It decrees honors for the deceased and regulates the succession for the priesthood of Dionysus that he held. The decree also states that the stele is to be set up near the god's temple. Since it was found in the lower peristyle court, we assume that the temple was in the lower peristyle court, and it hasn't been found, because the court has not been entirely excavated. So I remind you the lower peristyle court is on the top of the screen, and the higher peristyle court is at the bottom of the screen. What we learn from the two decrees is that Dionysius, being both priest and treasurer of the cult, so he financed the cult out of his own funds, built a temple to the god, donated 1,000 Attic drachmas for the expenses of the monthly sacrifices, and provided a special area in the house, along with gold and silver vessels, so that the members could partake of the sacrifices. He also donated 500 silver drachmas for the creation of a second statue next to the cult statue of the god, according to an oracle. Well, the epigram does not tell us which oracle, unfortunately. As the epigram, commissioned by Dionysius himself, mentions statues of the god in the plural, we assume that he was responsible for the erection of the cult statue as well. And here I would like to remind you of another great benefactor of Piraeus, Niarchos, who founded the Niarchos Foundation, and he created another theater, a Temple of the Arts, the Niarchos Opera. So I think this tradition is now carried on in the 21st century. It's really very interesting that Piraeus attracts all these great benefactors who are willing to spend lots and lots of money to promote the arts, and especially the arts of the theater. So thank you, Dionysius, because you are still being worshipped in Piraeus. In recognition of the services of Dionysius, the Orgeones, members of the Thyasos, voted to heroize the deceased Dionysius and set up his portrait next to the god's cult statue, where the portrait of his father, Agathocles, was already standing, presumably because the father had also been heroized. It may well be that Agathocles was heroized because he was the cult's founder in the late 3rd century. And I think this explains the name Dionysios, because he named his son after the god that he worshipped. That's why Dionysius was very aptly named, serving Dionysus. In any case, it appears from these inscriptions that heroization in the case of both Agathocles and his son Dionysius did not entail actual cult, for the sacrifices were only offered to the gods. We don't have any mention of offering any sacrifices to the two humans. Finally, after the death of Dionysius, the Thyasos appointed his son, the younger Agathocles, priest for life and treasurer of the cult, so presumably the family still had lots of money and they could maintain this cult. The house was destroyed by Sala, so we assume the cult was carried on until 86 BC. The area provided for the feast after the sacrifice is presumably to be found in one of the rooms of the peristyle courts. As for the Temple of Dionysus mentioned in the inscriptions, it is usually assumed that it has not been found because it lies beyond the borders of the excavated area. We don't see any foundations of a temple. However, I don't think that it was a real temple in our sense. I don't think it was a traditional temple with columns, but I think it was a modest chapel incorporated in the now missing part of the large peristyle court on the lower level of the house, and I want to show you a similar case. A chapel of Artemis dedicated to Artemis Orthia, which can be found in the Hellenistic compound of the Asclepion of Messini. I think you can see the ground plan of this chapel. On the bottom, you can see the temple, which is not really a temple with columns. And I believe that the Temple of Dionysus in Piraeus would have been something similar, and that's why we don't see it. The area, we should note here that the private cult of Dionysus seems to have been established towards the end of the 3rd century, at a time when we do not have any records of the state cult of Dionysus in Piraeus, no inscriptions at all. As we said earlier, the official Temple of Dionysus and the Dionysia festival are amply documented by inscriptions of the 4th century. But these disappear after the Macedonian occupation of the Mounikia Hill in 322. We have not yet found the official temple, but of course now Mounikia Hill is completely built over. The establishment of the private cult founded by Agathocles sometime after the liberation of Piraeus in 229 seems to have come at an opportune moment, filling a gap in Dionysiac worship in the area. We will now examine the torso of Dionysus from under the municipal theater in order to see if it can shed any further light on the cult. It's the first statue on the left. The torso is on display in the courtyard of the Piraeus Museum alongside the decree of 185 honoring Agathocles' son Dionysus and the limestone altar found in the upper courtyard of the house. And here I would like to make a small tribute to George Steinhauer, who recovered all these three things from the storerooms of the Piraeus Museum. When they were excavated in 1884, they were thrown into a storeroom and completely forgotten until George Steinhauer decorated the courtyard of the Piraeus Museum, and he was able to find these objects in the storerooms thanks to a very old labels, and so he resurrected them and put them on display, but he did not publish them. But anyhow, we are very grateful to him for recovering these stone objects. The torso of Dionysus is made of Pentelik marble. Its present height is 71 centimeters, which suggests that the original height of the statue was over 2 meters high, therefore it was over life size. And usually many statues of gods are about this height, 2 meters and something. I am grateful to the authorities of the Piraeus Museum for permission to publish the statue and for a lot of help during its study, especially during COVID. Also to Hans Goethe for taking new photos of the statue, and to Kevin Clinton for sharing with me his forthcoming new edition of the honorary decrees in IG1 cube. The statue is missing its head and neck, its arms and hands, as well as the lower legs and feet. The head and neck were made separately and inserted into a round cavity at the top of the torso. The walls of this cavity are rough-picked. 2 long locks of hair fall on each shoulder. The god wears a chiton with short sleeves. A panther skin is draped over the chiton, crossed over the waist, and held in place with a belt. The panther's head is tucked under the belt on the proper right side of the statue. And you can see that on the right-hand image. A paw of the panther is draped over the right shoulder, overlapping the locks of hair. A himation is draped diagonally over Dionysus' belly and looks as though it was hanging from the god's left forearm, which is now lost. As the torso was brutally cut down with a point, in order to be reduced to a building block, and you can see that on the left-hand slide, the rest of the image is no longer legible. But we can reconstruct the original statue from a copy. We have an under life-size statue of Dionysus in limestone, which was found out of context in Taranto, and is now in the Museo Archeologico Nazionale di Taranto. This statue, the statuette I should say, is dated in its publication that is cited on the screen before the destruction of Taranto by the Romans in 209 BC. This image of Dionysus is very close to the torso from Piraeus. The head and neck of the Taranto Dionysus were also made separately and possibly of marble and inserted. The long locks of hair on the left shoulder, the panther paw over the right shoulder, and the skin fastened at the waist with the head secured against the right flank are very, very similar to the Piraeus torso. His belt was made separately and has only left an imprint on the statue. A himation is pendant over the god's lower body, its two ends draped over his left forearm. One of the panther's paws hangs under the bottom hem of the himation. This Dionysus wears a short garment, as indicated by his left knee, which is just visible under the hem in the drawing. This statuette, unlike the Piraeus Dionysus, wears two short chitons, not one, and this is made clear by two sets of sleeves, a short sleeve which is similar to that of the Piraeus torso, and the long sleeve, which is underneath the first one. As the Taranto Dionysus and the Piraeus Dionysus echo one another without being exact copies, we assume that they're variants of a common prototype. Dionysus wearing a short chiton with a panther skin draped over it makes a frequent appearance on Attic reliefs of the 4th century. Like the relief from Mondragone in the Naples Archaeological Museum in the middle, where he appears at the extreme right, and the relief from Charistos in the Chalkis Museum on the right screen, where Dionysus can be seen in the middle. The relief from Charistos was dedicated to Demeter and Kori by a priestess, who is shown at the extreme right of the relief. Demeter and Kori would have been depicted at the left end of the relief, which is now missing. And in the middle, we have Pluto. Dionysus on these reliefs invariably wears a short chiton and boots, but the draping patterns of the chiton and panther skin vary. Whereas the panther skin of the Piraeus Dionysus is draped over his right shoulder, with the panther head tucked under the belt on the right, the images of Dionysus on the two reliefs have the panther skin over the left shoulder, with the panther's head over the left flank. Dionysus' chiton on the Charistos relief at the extreme the extreme right, is shortened by being fastened over the hips and forming a shallow colpos. The himation of the two relief figures is draped over their shoulders, in contrast to the Piraeus Dionysus, where it is draped over the lower body. In addition, the fabric of the chitons of the relief figures is thin and crinkly, whereas the chiton of the Piraeus statue is made of sturdier material. The closest parallel to the Piraeus torso, minus the himation covering the lower body, is a monumental marble statue of Dionysus leaning on an archaistic female figure at the right of the screen, known as the Hope Dionysus. It was acquired from the Villa Aldobrandini in Rome by the late 18th century collector and banker Thomas Hope, who was based in London, even though he was Dutch. The archaistic figure that he leans on, that this Dionysus leans on, was named Spes, Hope, which is of course a pun on the name of Thomas Hope. the collector and owner of the statue. This pan was turned into a double entendre by the Danish sculptor Bertel Thorvaldsen in homage to his patron Thomas Hope. In 1839, Thorvaldsen created his self-portrait leaning on his own version of Spes, presumably meaning both the personification of Hope and his patron Thomas Hope. The statue on the right is now in the Thorvaldsen Museum, where I was recently visiting. And Thomas Hope was very, very supportive of Thorvaldsen when Thorvaldsen lived in Rome. And it was thanks to the fact that Hope purchased statues of Thorvaldsen that he was able to start on a long career as a sculptor. And he also made a very nice bust of Thomas Hope. Since 1990, the Hope Dionysus is in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. This statue dates from the late 1st century BC or the early 1st century AD. It is generally thought to copy a prototype that was made in the first half of the 4th century BC. The god's arms and ivy wreath are restored, and the archaistic figure may not be part of the original, but an addition of the Roman copyist. The Hope Dionysus wears a thin, crinkly chiton, which is shortened by being belted at the hips, thus forming a shallow colpos, just like Dionysus on the Charistos relief. His panther skin is draped over the chiton exactly like on the Piraeus torso, and he wears boots. A himation hangs down his back. His lowered right hand may have held a cantharos, and his left hand, raised to the side, probably held a thyrsus by analogy with the Charistos relief, and we may restore similar attributes on the Piraeus torso. A stylistic parallel to the Hope Dionysus, securely dated to the 4th century, is provided by another Copenhagen sculpture, is provided by the figure of the Thracian goddess Bendis on a document relief from Piraeus, which is now in the Ny Carlsberg Glyptothek in Copenhagen. This relief crowns a decree honoring Euphies and Dexios for their services to a cult, and you can see the two people on the left, dated to the archonship of Kiphisophon in 329/8 BC. The honorands are represented as worshippers on a smaller scale at the left. Bendis stands on the right, and her companion has been identified as the Thracian hero Deloptis. In a cave-like window on the upper left corner, we see the half-figures of Hermes leading 3 nymphs followed by Pan. Bendis stands on the right, wearing a Thracian fox skin cap, as well as a crinkly chiton held up by means of a belt over the thighs. A panther skin is draped over her right shoulder and fastened at her waist, while the panther's head tucked under the belt is at the proper right side. A himation draped over Bendis' left arm falls down her back. The similarity of the Bendis statuary type to that of the Hope Dionysus is remarkable. Considering that Bendis' cult was officially introduced to Piraeus around 430, and that her sanctuary was on Munichia Hill, presumably not far from the sanctuary of Dionysus, the affinity of the imagery of the two divinities does not have to be accidental. That Bendis on the Copenhagen relief reproduces a statuary type is documented by a handful of marble statuettes, notably one of the late 4th century, which is now in Belgium in the Marimont Museum on the right. A similar Bendis appears on a votive relief in the British Museum on the left, with a torch raised theme, where the panther skin is draped over her left shoulder, not the right, indicating that the Bendis type was transmitted through a number of variants, as was the case with the statuary type of the Hope Dionysus. And I would like to point out that Bendis was celebrated with a torch race, and so was Dionysus. The iconographic type of Bendis first appears on Attic red figure vase painting of the late 5th century, for example, on a skyphos in Tübingen, showing Themis with Bendis, and they are both named with inscriptions above their heads, not visible on this slide. Bendis is sometimes associated with Artemis, who is also sometimes shown with short chiton and boots. But the panther skin we never see it on Artemis, and it may have been inspired by Dionysus. An image of Dionysus in crinkly chiton and panther skin, similar to that of Bendis, appears on an Attic red figure Kous in Tübingen, dated to about 430, 420 BC. It has been argued that this iconographical type of Dionysus was inspired by Bendis, but I think it is more reasonable to suppose that the Thracian connections of Dionysus triggered the association of the two divinities, and that his image comes first. The crinkly chiton of the Hope Dionysus on the right, held up by a belt over the hips, probably echoes the classical original of the 4th century, while the thick chiton of the Piraeus torso is a variant known from statues of the later 4th century, like the statue of a Macedonian on the left, which is displayed also in the Piraeus Museum courtyard very close to the torso of Dionysus. It appears from all this that the Piraeus torso is a Hellenistic variant of a monumental statue of Dionysus of the first half of the 4th century. That original may have stood in a sanctuary of Dionysus, either the sanctuary of Dionysus Linnaeus, which has not been found, but it was somewhere nearby, close to the New Acropolis Museum, or the sanctuary of Dionysus Elefthereus near the Theater of Dionysus, also nearby here. But I think it more likely that the Piraeus Dionysus stood in the Temple of Dionysus. The 4th century Piraeus Dionysus stood in the Temple of Dionysus on Munichia Hill, considering its affinity to the image of Bendis, originating in her sanctuary also on Munichia Hill. Presumably, the original of the Hope Dionysus, the 4th century statue, was a famous landmark, and that is why it was reproduced for the cult statue of the private Piraeus sanctuary. The Piraeus torso is therefore one of the earliest instances of a Hellenistic reproduction of a famous classical original. We conclude with a bit of speculation about the function of the Piraeus torso. The two decrees honoring Dionysius mention two statues of Dionysus paid for by Dionysius, a cult statue and a second statue erected next to it. Both statues were paid by Dionysius according to the evidence of the epigram, because it says he paid for the cult statue and also for the other one. Now, the decree of 376 that was published after his death says that he paid 500 drachmas for the votive statue. But are 500 enough to cover the cost of an over life-size marble statue? And I think not. If we look at the evidence of the cost of statues, we go to Epidaurus, and we look at the building accounts of the Temple of Asclepius at Epidaurus from the early 4th century, and they cite the price of 3 marble acroteria at 2,240 Attic drachmas. That would amount to about 746 drachmas per statue. The acroteria, which are now at the Athens National Museum, are under life size, and they cost 700 drachmas, not 500, much more than the statue in Piraeus. As there are no records of marble statue prices in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC to match the size of our Dionysos torso, I would say that the premise that 500 drachmas could cover the cost of an over life-size marble statue is questionable. With the present state of our knowledge, it appears more likely that the Piraeus torso is not the votive but the cal statue financed by Dionysos, and therefore it is an appropriate subject for this seminar. And this concludes my seminar, which is work in progress, so I would be very grateful for any comments and help on what I have just told you. Thank you.